Have you ever wondered why something so small can make you so mad? Why a careless comment, a delayed reply, or even a disapproving glance can ignite a fire within you that burns hotter than the situation deserves? We like to believe it's the other person's fault. We tell ourselves, they made me angry. But Carl Jung would challenge that belief. He would ask, why did you respond that way? What part of you is being disturbed? Anger isn't the enemy. It's a messenger. It's your inner world knocking on the door, asking to be seen. Most of us have been taught to suppress it, to feel ashamed of it, or to explode in it. But Jung's approach invites something radically different, to sit with it, study it, and understand what lies beneath. Because the truth is, most anger is not about the present moment. It's about an old wound being reopened. It's about a part of ourselves that we've disowned, something we've pushed into the shadows because we were told it was too much, too soft, too sensitive, or too dangerous. And now, when someone accidentally touches that hidden part, we erupt. Not because they meant to hurt us, but because that part of us is still raw and unhealed. Jung called these hidden parts the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we repress because they don't fit the image we want to present to the world. These shadows don't disappear. They wait. They linger beneath the surface. And when the right trigger comes along, they emerge, not gently but forcefully. Anger is often the smoke that rises when the fire of a shadow is ignited. So how do we begin to stop being so reactive? How do we stop letting other people's behavior dictate our peace? First, by shifting the question. Instead of asking, why are they doing this to me? We ask, why is this affecting me so deeply? This is not about blaming ourselves, it's about reclaiming power. Because the moment you recognize that your anger is yours, not theirs, you are no longer at their mercy. Let's say someone ignores you. They walk by without saying hello. Immediately, your body tenses. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts spinning with stories. They're disrespecting me. They don't value me. They think they're better than me. But pause. Ask yourself, why does being ignored hurt so much? Is it really about them? Or is it awakening an old story, maybe from childhood, when being overlooked felt like being invisible, unworthy, or unloved? That's the heart of Jung's insight. He believed that when you overreact to a situation, it's because the situation has hit something unconscious. And until you bring that unconscious part into the light, you will keep repeating the same emotional loops. You will keep getting angry at the same kinds of people, for the same reasons, and never truly understand why. Anger, then, is a gateway. It points to something you haven't resolved. It's a flare shot into the sky from a part of your psyche that's asking for attention. The more you ignore it, the more power it gains. But when you turn toward it with curiosity instead of shame, it begins to soften. You begin to see it not as a flaw, but as a signal. This doesn't mean anger is always unjustified. There are times when anger is appropriate, even necessary. Injustice, abuse, cruelty, these are realities that should stir us. But even in those moments, the key is awareness. Are you choosing your anger as a response, or are you being possessed by it? Jung warned about the danger of being overtaken by archetypal energies, the deep, collective patterns that live in our unconscious. Anger can be one of those energies. When you get lost in it, you're no longer acting from your conscious self. You're being pulled into a role, a fighter, a victim, a punisher. And while those roles may feel powerful, they often lead to regret, disconnection, and more suffering. True power lies in being able to feel your anger without being controlled by it. To say, I'm angry right now, and still choose your next action consciously. This requires space. Inner space. And that space is created by awareness. So the next time you feel anger rising, try this. Pause. Don't speak. Don't act. Just breathe. Name what you're feeling. Not just anger, but the specific flavor of it. Is it betrayal? Rejection? Shame? Powerlessness? The more precisely you can name the emotion, the less control it has over you. Then ask, where in my life have I felt this before? What memory does this bring up? What belief about myself is being triggered? Maybe it's the belief that you're not good enough, that you're always being left out, that you have to fight to be seen. And now ask, is that belief true? Is it serving you? Can you see that the person in front of you is not your past, not your parents, not your ex, not your bully? Can you separate the present moment from emotional echoes of your history? This is the work Jung calls individuation, the process of becoming whole. And part of becoming whole is learning to reclaim your emotions as yours, not as weapons given to others to use against you. You're not weak for feeling anger. You're not enlightened for suppressing it. What matters is what you do with it. Do you turn it into awareness, or do you turn it into destruction? Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's the invitation. Instead of resenting your triggers, study them. Instead of running from your rage, sit with it. There's a deeper truth beneath every outburst, a wounded part waiting to be seen, loved, and healed. When you begin to relate to your anger as a teacher, not an enemy, you stop being its victim. You gain clarity, you gain strength, and most of all, you gain peace. Because peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from understanding yourself so deeply that the world can no longer shake you. And it starts not by blaming others, but by listening to the message your anger has been trying to deliver all along. There's a strange pattern in life that repeats itself over and over again. You meet someone new, and they seem harmless at first. But slowly, something about them begins to irritate you. Maybe it's the way they interrupt you, or how they seem to ignore your opinion. Or maybe it's the confidence they carry, a confidence that feels to you like arrogance. You try to brush it off. But deep inside, something stirs. Something uncomfortable. Something sharp. And before you know it, you're upset. Offended. Triggered. Maybe you snap at them. Or maybe you retreat in silence, stewing in resentment. Either way, the interaction feels personal, even though, rationally, you know it might not be. So what's really happening here? Why do some people bother us so much, even when they haven't done anything truly wrong? Carl Jung offered an answer that many people are not ready to hear. He believed that the qualities we most dislike in others are often parts of ourselves we've disowned. These disowned parts live in our unconscious mind. Jung called them the shadow. And the shadow is not evil. It's simply unknown. It's everything we have refused to accept about ourselves. The anger, the fear, the jealousy, the pride, the weakness. And the moment someone embodies that trait, the trait we have tried so hard to suppress, we feel an intense emotional reaction. We project our shadow onto them, and we judge them for the thing we cannot face in ourselves. This projection happens without our awareness. That's what makes it so powerful and so dangerous. You think you're angry at the other person, but in truth, you're angry at yourself. At the part of you you've spent your whole life trying to deny. And when someone else reminds you of it, your ego panics. It says, that's not me. That's them. They're the problem. But what if they're not the problem at all? What if they're just a mirror? Jung often spoke of the world as a mirror. He believed that the people who trigger us are messengers from the unconscious. They show us what we still need to integrate. If someone's arrogance enrages you, maybe you've disowned your own need to feel worthy or powerful. If someone's passivity frustrates you, maybe you've buried your own fear of being too passive. If someone's emotionality annoys you, maybe you've suppressed your own sensitivity. The world reflects back the parts of you you haven't made peace with yet. And here lies an incredible opportunity. Every time someone triggers you, you can either react blindly, or you can wake up. You can ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? Not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. What am I seeing in them that I cannot accept in myself? Where did I learn to suppress this trait? Did I grow up in a home where showing emotion was punished? Did I learn that being confident made people dislike me? Did I associate sensitivity with weakness or success with guilt? Once you start asking these questions, you open the door to self-awareness. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you left behind in order to be accepted, to be safe, or to belong. And the more you integrate your shadow, the less others can control your emotions. Because the truth is, no one can trigger you without your permission. If there were no wound, there would be no pain. If there were no rejection of that trait within you, there would be no reaction when you see it outside you. But let's be honest. This isn't easy. It's much more comfortable to blame others. To say, they're toxic, they're rude, they're manipulative. And sometimes, yes, People do act out of their own woundedness. They hurt others. They cross boundaries. They lie, cheat, or belittle. But even then, your reaction is still your responsibility. You don't have to absorb their energy. You don't have to engage. You don't have to let their behavior define your inner state. What Jung teaches us is not that everyone is innocent, but that our strongest reactions are often clues. Clues to where we are still fragmented. Clues to where we've given our power away. Clues to the places inside us that are still asking to be seen and accepted. And when you stop blaming and start observing, a strange shift happens. You begin to feel lighter, calmer. You start noticing patterns. You realize, this isn't the first time I've felt this way. You remember that teacher who dismissed you in school, the sibling who always got the praise, the parent who never listened. Suddenly, the person in front of you isn't just a stranger. They're a symbol. They're a doorway to a deeper story. Your story. And now, instead of reacting, you can reflect. You can pause. You can ask, is this about them or is this about me? You can choose to respond with awareness instead of anger, with clarity instead of chaos. And slowly, you begin to reclaim your emotional freedom. This doesn't mean you have to tolerate bad behavior. Boundaries are important. Saying no is essential. But you can do all of that without emotional reactivity. You can stand firm without being cruel. You can walk away without needing to make the other person wrong. That is true power. The power that comes from knowing yourself so deeply that others can no longer use your pain against you. Imagine this. Someone criticizes you, and instead of collapsing or attacking, you simply hear them. You breathe. You feel the sting, but you don't fight it. You explore it. You ask, why does this hurt? You find the root. And then you decide, this says more about them than it does about me. And you let it go. Not because you're passive, but because you've seen through the illusion. You've reclaimed the part of yourself that no longer needs their validation. This is what Jung meant by integration. To become whole is not to become perfect. It's to bring all parts of yourself into the light, even the ones you've been taught to hide. And as you do, your triggers lose their grip. The people who once upset you become teachers. The situations that once broke you become fuel for your growth. You stop being a victim of your emotions, and you start becoming the master of your inner world. And maybe that's the real lesson here. That emotional freedom doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from understanding yourself, from owning your reactions, from facing your shadows and choosing to love them instead of fear them. Because when you do, no one can bother you the way they used to. Not because people have changed, but because you have. And in that shift, you find something precious. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing that no matter what happens around you, you are rooted in truth. You are grounded in awareness. And no one can take that away. That's the beginning of real freedom. And it starts with one brave question. What is this trying to teach me about me? Imagine this. Someone says something that feels offensive. Your heart skips a beat. Your face heats up. Your jaw tightens. Your mind rushes to defend yourself. You want to speak up, to strike back, to explain, to justify. But what if you didn't? What if instead of reacting, you simply observed? In a world addicted to speed and noise, silence feels like rebellion. And yet, in the teachings of Carl Jung, silence, inner silence, is the first step toward true power. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. One of the most powerful manifestations of this is emotional reactivity. When someone triggers us and we immediately react, we are not making a choice. We are acting out a script written long ago, deep inside our psyche, often without our awareness. To break free from this script, we must become the observer, the witness. Not the one who shouts or cries or storms out of the room, but the one who sees all that happened within and says, interesting. Look at how I feel right now. This act of inner observation is not detachment. It's not cold or aloof. It's awareness, conscious awareness. And with awareness comes the ability to choose. Most of us were never taught how to sit with our emotions. We were taught to judge them, suppress them, or be consumed by them. We live in extremes. Either we pretend we're fine when we're not, or we explode in ways we later regret. But there is a third way. The way of the conscious witness. The one who watches without judgment. The one who listens to the body's signals, to the mind's narratives, to the heart's longings, and does not rush to act. This is where freedom begins. Because the moment you stop reacting and start observing, you begin to create space between stimulus and response. In that space lies your power. The power to respond instead of react. The power to choose your words, your tone, your energy. And most importantly, the power to understand where your emotion is really coming from. Imagine that space like a pause button on life. Something happens. You feel triggered. But instead of pushing play, you press pause. You breathe. You become still. You say to yourself, I notice I'm feeling angry. Not, I am angry, but I notice anger is present. This simple shift in language moves you from identification to observation, from being lost in the storm to standing on the shore, watching it pass. Jung often emphasized the difference between acting from the ego and acting from the self. The ego reacts. It defends. It attacks. It wants to be right, to win, to prove. The self, on the other hand, witnesses. It listens. It considers. It speaks only when it has something worth saying. When you observe instead of react, you begin to step out of the ego and into the self. And that shift is transformational. Think about the last time someone upset you. Maybe they questioned your integrity, or dismissed your idea, or made a sarcastic remark. You probably felt that familiar rush, that surge of heat in your chest, that inner tension that screamed for release. But did reacting in that moment bring peace? Or did it leave you more entangled, more defensive, more drained? When you choose to observe instead, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear what's really going on, not just outside you, but inside you. You start noticing the thoughts that run through your mind, the assumptions, the fears, the old wounds being touched. And instead of acting them out, you hold them gently. You say, I see you. I hear you. But I don't have to follow you. This doesn't mean you become passive. Observation is not an action. Is preparation for right action. When you take the time to observe, your response becomes more grounded, more thoughtful, more aligned with who you really are. You don't speak to hurt. You speak to heal. You don't act to defend your ego. You act to express your truth. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the gift of space. A few seconds of inner stillness before you respond. A few moments to check in with your breath, your body, your truth. In those moments, you reclaim your sovereignty. No longer at the mercy of other people's words or behavior, you become anchored in your own presence. Jung believed that every emotional reaction was an opportunity to know yourself better, to uncover a belief, a wound, a fear, a forgotten story. And by observing that reaction, you bring it into the light. You make it conscious. And once it's conscious, it no longer has power over you. You don't need to yell or shut down. You can stay open, present, curious. This practice is simple but not easy. It requires intention, patience, and above all, compassion for yourself. Because you will mess up. You will react. You will say things you regret. That's part of the journey. But every time you choose to pause, every time you choose to observe instead of react, you rewire your brain. You shift your identity. You grow. And eventually you become someone new. Someone who doesn't take everything personally. Someone who doesn't need to defend every opinion. Someone who can hold space for discomfort without needing to control it. This is emotional maturity. And it begins with observation. Next time you feel triggered, try this. Stop. Breathe. Name the feeling. Notice where it lives in your body. Is it tightness in the chest? A burning in the stomach? A pressure in your throat? Don't rush to analyze. Just notice. Let be there. Then ask, what story is my mind telling right now? Maybe it's, they don't respect me. Or I'm not safe. Or, I always get ignored. Now question that story. Is it true? Is it based on fact or fear? Is it rooted in the present or in your past? The more you question your automatic thoughts, the more freedom you gain. Because the truth is, not every thought deserves your belief. Not every feeling needs to become an action. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are is not your anger, not your triggers, not your wounds. You are the awareness behind it all, the still point in the chaos, the observer who sees clearly even when the storm rages. By observing instead of reacting, you begin to live from that still point. And from there, life looks different. People may still be rude. Challenges may still arise. But you are no longer shaken, no longer controlled. You respond with wisdom, with strength, with grace. This is not about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about choosing moment by moment to stay awake, to stay grounded, to live not from fear, but from awareness. That's how you stop being bothered by everyone. Not by changing the world, but by changing your relationship with it. One moment of observation at a time. There comes a moment in life when you begin to question who you really are. Not the name you were given. Not the roles you've been playing. Not the masks you've worn to fit in, to be liked, to feel safe. But something deeper. Something beneath all the noise. That silent observer behind your thoughts. That quiet presence behind your emotions. Carl Jung called it the self. Most people go through life without ever truly meeting this deeper self. Instead, they live from the ego. The ego is not evil. It is necessary. It gives us a sense of identity. It helps us function in the world. But when the ego becomes the master instead of servant, we suffer. Because the ego is fragile, is always comparing, defending, proving. It feeds on recognition, control, and certainty. And when those things are threatened, the ego reacts. That is why we get angry. That is why we get bothered by others. Because the ego feels attacked. Someone questions our opinion, and we feel personally insulted. Someone forgets to thank us, and we feel invisible. Someone else succeeds, and we feel like we are falling behind. But the self does not play this game. The self observes without needing to react. It sees the truth behind the appearances. It does not need validation because it is already whole. Jung believed that the journey of life is the journey from ego to self. A process he called individuation. Individuation is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who you truly are by integrating all the parts of yourself you've rejected. The light and the shadow. The strong and the soft. The loud and the quiet. And as you begin to integrate, you start to shift. You no longer react from the wounded ego. You respond from the grounded self. Imagine being in a room where someone insults you. The ego wants to fight back, to prove your worth, to make them regret their words. But the self doesn't need to do any of that. The self listens. It hears the pain behind the insult. It sees the projection. It knows that the words are not about you. They are about the person speaking them. And because the self knows this, it stays calm. It chooses peace over pride. This is not passivity. It is clarity. It is the power that comes from not being easily moved by others. From knowing that your value does not decrease because someone else fails to see it. When you live from the self, you are no longer a puppet of the world around you. You do not dance to the tune of praise or fall apart at the sound of criticism. You stand in your truth, rooted, still awake. But how do you connect to this self? How do you stop living from the ego's drama and start living from your deeper center? It begins with awareness. Start noticing when you feel the need to prove, to defend, to impress. Ask yourself, who is speaking right now? Is this my ego or myself? If the voice inside is panicked, defensive, or desperate for approval, it is probably the ego. If the voice is steady, open, and curious, it is the self. You can also connect to the self through practices that quiet the mind and open the heart. Meditation, journaling, being in nature, creative expression, or simply sitting in silence. These practices help you step out of the constant noise of the world and tune into your inner knowing. The more time you spend in that space, the more familiar it becomes. The more you recognize your own voice beneath the opinions of others. Jung often emphasized the importance of listening to your inner voice, especially when it goes against the collective. The self does not always follow the crowd. It often walks a quieter, deeper path. One that may not make sense to others, but feels undeniably right to you. Trusting that voice takes courage, but is the only path to true peace. When you are rooted in the self, Your relationships change. You no longer need people to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. You stop trying to fix, control, or rescue others. You allow them to be on their journey while you stay true to yours. And because of that, you become a safe space. People feel your presence, your calm, your integrity. You become magnetic not because you are trying to impress, but because you are fully yourself. This kind of presence is rare. It is not loud, but it is powerful. It does not seek attention, but it commands respect. Because it is real. And in a world full of masks, authenticity is revolutionary. But make no mistake. Living from the self does not mean you never feel anger or sadness or fear. It means you feel everything, but you are not overwhelmed by it. You let the emotions pass through you without clinging to them. You trust that they are visitors, not definitions of who you are. When someone offends you, you may still feel the sting. But you don't build a story around it. You don't carry it for days. You don't let it shape your mood or your actions. You acknowledge it. You learn from it. And then you release it. That is the power of the self. It allows you to experience life fully without being enslaved by it. The more you live from the self, the more resilient you become. Life may still throw challenges your way. People may still disappoint you. Plans may still fall apart. But you are no longer shaken. You respond with clarity instead of confusion, with compassion instead of blame, with strength instead of force. Jung believed that the self is the guiding center of the psyche. When you align with it, you are guided not by fear, but by inner truth. You stop asking, "What should I do to be liked?" and start asking, "What is true for me?" That question changes everything. It simplifies your life. It clears away the noise. It brings you back home. Home is not a place. It is a state of being. A quiet confidence that says, "I know who I am." When you reach that place, the opinions of others lose their grip. You stop needing to convince. You stop needing to chase. You simply live. And that kind of life is rare, precious, free. So the next time someone triggers you, ask yourself, is this my ego reacting, or can I respond for myself? You may not get it right every time. That's okay. This is a practice, not a performance. Every moment is a chance to return to your center, to realign, to remember who you really are. Because the truth is, no one can bother you unless you let them. And when you live from yourself, you stop letting them. Not from pride, not from distance, but from a place of deep peace. You become anchored in your truth. And from that place, nothing can shake you. That is the gift of living from the self. And it is the path that Jung pointed to over and over again. The path of integration, of wholeness, of freedom. There is a moment, quiet and almost invisible, that separates those who are ruled by the world from those who are free. It is the moment right before a reaction, right before the words fly out, before the anger surges forward, before the story takes over. In that moment, you can feel everything rising within you. The tension, the heat, the old memories flooding in. And in that moment, most people fall into the trap. They react. They lash out. They shut down. They try to control what's outside because they feel helpless inside. But something extraordinary happens when you choose to remain still. When you don't follow the pull of the reaction. When you let silence fill the space where anger once lived. That silence is not emptiness. It is power. It is the power to choose a new response. To stay grounded when everything around you wants to pull you into chaos. Carl Jung understood this well. He knew that real freedom does not come from controlling your environment. It comes from mastering your inner world. When you are no longer a slave to your emotions, you become a master of your life. Silence, in this sense, is not weakness. It is presence. It is the expression of a mind that sees clearly and a heart that is not easily shaken. Think about how much of our lives are spent reacting. Reacting to words, to glances, to opinions, to imagined slights. How often do we carry conversations in our heads that never actually happened? How often do we rehearse what we will say next, how we will defend ourselves, how we will prove our worth? All of that noise is the ego trying to protect itself. But the self does not play those games. The self lives in silence. Not the silence of repression, but the silence of deep understanding. Jung taught that every reaction is a chance to become more conscious. When someone triggers you, and you choose not to react, you are not suppressing your truth. You are making space for it. You are stepping out of the automatic and into the intentional. That space, that pause, that silence is where transformation begins. It is in that silence that you begin to hear the deeper voice within you. The one that says, this is not about them. This is about me. This is about my wounds, my fears, my history. And now I have a chance to heal. Not by changing the other person, but by listening to what this feeling is trying to teach me. That is the essence of inner work. It is not about never being triggered. It is about using your triggers as tools for growth. But silence takes courage. It takes strength to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. To stay present when everything in you wants to run or fight. It is much easier to react, to blame, to argue. But that kind of power is hollow. True strength is quiet. It does not need to be loud because it is rooted in truth. Imagine being in a room where someone criticizes you and you feel the old pain rising. But instead of responding with anger, you breathe. You listen. You notice the stories forming in your mind, and you let them pass like clouds in the sky. You stay still. And in that stillness, you find clarity. You realize their words are not a reflection of you, but a mirror of their own state. You do not take it personally because you are no longer living through your ego. You are anchored in yourself. This is not easy. It is a lifelong practice. There will be days when you forget, when the noise of the world drowns out the silence within you. When you react before you can remember to pause. That is part of the journey. But every time you return to the silence, you grow stronger. You build a deeper connection with yourself. You become less reactive and more responsive. Less defensive and more discerning. The world will still be chaotic. People will still be rude, impatient, careless. But when you live from your inner stillness, their behavior no longer dictates your peace. You are no longer pulled into every conflict or disturbance. You choose what deserves your energy. And most things don't. Jung believed that our greatest task is to become whole. And wholeness is not found in constant motion. It is found in stillness. In the quiet moments where you meet yourself without judgment. Where you sit with your feelings and let them speak. Not to act on them, but to understand them. And in that understanding, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to know that you are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. This awareness is what sets you free. Because now no one can pull you into drama unless you choose to enter it. No one can make you feel inferior unless you already doubt your worth. No one can disturb your peace unless you hand it over to them. And when you stop handing over your peace, you become powerful in a different way. Not in a way that dominates or controls, but in a way that radiates calm, presence, and inner authority. People feel it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. Because it is rare. It is real. The journey to this place is not linear. It is not easy. But it is worth it. Because when you learn to sit in silence with yourself, to feel your emotions without reacting, to hear your inner truth without needing external validation, you become unshakable. You stop chasing approval. You stop fearing rejection. You stop needing others to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. Instead, you find your anchor within. And from that place, life becomes less of a battlefield and more of a meditation. You move through it with grace, with clarity, with peace. That is the promise of this path. Not a life without challenges, but a life where you are no longer ruled by them. A life where you can face anything with presence. Where your silence is not emptiness, but a sanctuary. A source of wisdom. A source of strength. Carl Jung once said that solitude is where one discovers that one is not alone. In your silence, you meet yourself. And in meeting yourself, you realize that you were never truly alone, never truly powerless, never truly broken. You were simply waiting to come home to yourself. So let this be your reminder. The next time you feel the urge to react, to defend, to prove, pause. Take a breath. Return to your silence. And in that silence, listen. Not to the noise of the world, but to the wisdom that rises from within. It will not scream. It will not demand. But it will guide you, gently back to who you really are. And when you live from that place, you will no longer be easily angered or bothered by anyone. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You are no longer a product of your environment. You are the creator of your response. And in that you are free. So the next time anger rises or someone tries to shake your peace, remember, you have the power to choose. You are not your reaction. You are the awareness behind it. And in that awareness, you'll find the strength, the clarity, and the calm that no one can take away. If this message resonates with you, and you're on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and deep transformation, make sure to subscribe to Library Mindset. We create content that speaks to your inner world and helps you live with more awareness, presence, and purpose. Your mind is a library. Let's fill it with wisdom,